So the daily prayer is where I find myself at the moment, but I'm basically going to share of how I got here. It is my testimony thus far. You will see that 14 is on the screen, and yeah, this number I would say has been chasing me, or what I thought chasing me initially in my life, but actually I believe leading me now as God has given me revelation of what 14 means for me. Um, just going to move the videos so I can see what I need to see. There we go. This number 14, as I said, is something that seemed to be everywhere in my life, and it would always stand out for me, and I would always be curious about why it's popping up here and there. So an example of that is that when I went to boarding school, my laundry number, you had a number that you marked all your clothing with was 14. So at that stage of my life, I would say that I just called it my lucky number. But later on, I came to find out that as the kind of thing on the right says there, that the number 14 Hebrew basically means hand. For me, it came to be the realization that, the hand of God was on my life, even when I didn't recognize it. He was always with me, watching over me, and had plans for my life. No. So this is a photo of my family, of my wife Debbie, my daughter Emily, my son Luke. Um, Yeah, uh, f there's a scripture that the Lord revealed to me, um, that speaks about the true vine, and that one that is grafted in, and I know that it is a reference to Israel, and the Gentiles that we've been grafted in. But for me personally, that scripture is relates to my family. Um, Neither of my kids have declared Jesus as their savior. But I know that they are coming to the Lord, and it's just a matter of time in terms of His plans for them. So my son is adopted. So in some ways, he is the one that is grafted into our family, and I believe that he's going to find Jesus first, and that then my daughter will follow. So that's what was shared with me by the Lord. Um, a little bit about my early years. That's my mother and father in the photo. That we actually standing over here in the hospital where I was born. I was born in a little small town in the Northern Cape, where a lot of iron ore comes from. A town known as Sishen, this hospital actually where I was born, it's no longer there because they actually built this original hospital on the iron ore. So then later on they decided that no, they're going to knock that down so they can mine the ore that is underneath. But when my father was still alive, we took a road trip back to there, and we found that original hospital. And when I came there, I guess I was surprised, but I shouldn't have been surprised. But I saw that was Ward 14, that was where I was born. So there you can't really see it, but it says Ding 14 over there. They had renamed this town Dingleton when they wanted to change the name of it so that Sishen and Katu could live on. So it was renamed to Dingleton. So basically, I'm one of six kids. My father was a mining engineer. We grew up in small towns. We were all born in these small little towns all across the country. Um, we grew up, Anglican, but we only really went to church on days like Easter and Christmas. So I hadn't really come to Christ. I didn't really know Jesus. My father was a hardworking father, but he was also an absent father. So he often wasn't around. And because we lived in small towns, We tended to go to boarding school. My siblings all went actually quite young in primary school to places like CBC, Kimberley, and myself, even though we were living in Johannesburg at the time when I went to high school, I went to Pretoria Boys High. You can see there with me with my hostel buddies at Pretoria Boys High. When I was 13, tragically, my brother took his own life. He had fought in the war in Angola, and he had suffered from bipolar on his return, and he gave up that fight and took his own life when I was 13. So I was angry with God. I didn't want to have anything to do with God. It took my brother, and I sought comfort in the wrong places. Um, I thought I was exposed to pornography at a very young age, and it's something that kept me bound and trapped. Um, so I sought the lure of wealth and women, and even though my father was an engineer and I loved to build things and make things with my hand, uh, he hadn't been around. So I chose a path to become an accountant because I saw a path of wealth and success, and women. So I chose that path at that time. So I met my wife at KPMG. We did articles together. Um, and uh, it's funny in those days. I would say that she was I was 1 year ahead of her. So I showed her the ropes on our first client, which was Caltex, which is now Astron Energy, where Debbie still works. But yeah, as we like to say, I'm the vice captain of a two-man team. Yeah, that is a joke that we used to use a long time, but also learned that no, God requires me to be the leader of my household, and to only I can carry that mantle. So Debbie, we were dating, and she basically recommitted her life. She was backslidden, and she said, well, she's going back to church. And even though I wasn't following the Lord, I knew not to make her choose between me and God. So she dragged me to church, and we used to joke that when I came to her church, was charismatic. I laughed at the situation. I said, "Do we have to pay a cover charge to get in here because there's a band on the stage and everybody's got their hands raised?" And I laughed and said, "These your church I would refer to as the happy clappy church, and that everybody was ka-chang ka-chang ah." Um, but yeah, I came to know the Lord at that church, many elements involved. At Jubilee Community Church, I attended Alpha, started to seek. And one day when I was actually had a fever, the Lord gave me two dreams. And the one was about getting married to Debbie, and the birth of our son, and the name that I would give him. And through those two dreams, I started to really question. And I went to my mother and spoke to her about Evan's loss. And I came to find out that my brother Evan had been reading a book called I Dare to Call You Father, which is a book about a Muslim woman who comes to Christ. And his bookmark was on the page where the woman gives her life to Jesus. So that allowed me to forgive. It sounds silly because well, it's not from my place to forgive God, but in my heart, allowed me to soften my heart to be able to allow the Lord in. And I came to know Christ at that stage. And I found freedom in those early days. God really moved, but in many ways, I wasn't ready to let go of my plans. And I was still, although I had some freedoms from the addictions, I still found myself trapped and like a dog returning to his vomit from time to time. And yeah, sadly, I fell away and didn't really come to full freedom at that time. In 2007, Debbie got given an opportunity with Chevron for us to go to California, We spent 2.5 years in California. I initially didn't work sorry, I realized I skipped past over here. Um, we had a daughter in 2005, and this was a surprise because, as you know, I'd from my dream been expecting a son. It's my daughter Emily on the right. We went to California, and in California, I found healing at a church that we were there. We attended Cornerstone in Livermore, and that church had an incredible ministry for men that were struggling with dealing with sexual addictions. And there, amongst a group of men, I was able to go through basically a 12-step program and find freedom from my addiction. And there I also started to listening to the word. I discovered the daily audio Bible, and this became part of my daily routine. This is a great ministry where the founder reads the Bible every day and basically does it in a year. So that my life began to be washed with the words of God. Um, we also started to seek for to increase our family and started to try to have a second child and discovered that Debbie had secondary infertility. So then began a journey of trying to understand how God would fulfill the promise. Um, from a work front, and that you've been seeing these captions over there in terms of what's happening in work. At that time, I had an amazing job with Robert Half, and specialized in privacy and information security. And somehow, actually, Debbie always used to say that I worked at Robert Half days because we had an amazing team. Both of my bosses were Christians. We used to pray together, and as a team, we used to do more fun things together as work. But the Lord really blessed that and gave me capacity to have healing in my life at that time. In 2010, we moved to Jakarta with Debbie's job. And at that time, I had to step out in faith because I'd been used to walking a path with brothers surrounding me, these men in the church at in California, and now I didn't have that group of men around me. I didn't have a band of brothers. So I had to step out. So basically, I started a ministry similar to what I'd done in California at the Jakarta International Christian Fellowship. I started a group, and I started to also seek some counseling training and stepping into ministry. I volunteered part time to help to do the IT within the church. Um, but I also discovered that the opposition that you encounter when you put your head above the parapet, and I didn't really have covering and protection, and my life came under fire and an attack. And at that point, I chose an easier route. I went and accepted a job from Deloitte, and I went back into consulting. Um, we were still struggling with infertility, and trying to understand, Lord, you've promised a son, but we don't seem to have the ability to have a son. We had every type of infertility treatment that you could think of that we were willing to have. There were some that we didn't feel that were right, that were too much meddling in terms of being God. So there were some steps we weren't willing to go through. Um, uh, and ultimately, yeah, sorry, keep on going. Then the Lord answered our prayers, and we were matched with Luke, our son. Luke is from East London. I don't have time to tell his whole story, but basically, we had to come back to South Africa to adopt him. So we chose to come back as soon as we heard. We were actually in South Africa visiting for my mother-in-law's wedding, and my grandmother on Debbie's side's 80th. So we drove to East London when we found out the news that we'd be matched with Luke. We filled in as much as we could, and then we committed to pack up our lives. So we moved back to Jakarta for another 3 months to pack up our lives and moved it back to South Africa. When we came home, I initially was the pattern stay at home. and tried my hand at an entrepreneurship. I started a company doing governance, risk, and compliance. That didn't go well, and realized how hard it was to start a company, and then joined another company called Mobius, which was some KPMG guys that had gone on their own and led their Cape Town consulting team. Then I had the opportunity to join a fintech startup called Better. And um, at the time, I realized now that I was just really chasing success. As a husband who had often been at home, I felt that I had missed out on opportunities. So I um, chased after this opportunity that was open to join the startup team that was about to launch a digital bank for the youth. In retrospect, I realized that this was an idol, and that I was really chasing after the money and wealth that possibly would come if this thing blew up and became hugely successful. Yeah, that is a time of brokenness for me, but it also was a time of getting back to what God's plan was. That brings me to the stage that I basically feel that I have been in for the last couple of years, a time of seeking, a time of trying to understand what God really has for me, halftime. There's a wonderful book by Bob Buford, if you haven't read it, and you find yourself at this time, or even if you are coming up to this time, I really encourage you to seek out and find that book. I also discovered Shay Bynes and her work, including this book, Grace Over Grind. And we were seeking a new place to call home post COVID, and we landed at the Bay City Church. It was just around about this time that the business was failing with Better. I was completely broken because we had poured not only my time for about 18 months, but also a lot of our finances into Better. And I felt like I was a failure. So the church was a huge blessing to me at this time. And as we became more involved in the Bay City Church, we were planning the first men's camp. So in this company that was basically going under, we were sort of waiting for uh, a possible investor to come. I spent most of my time planning for this men's camp that would happen in that year. And in that planning for the men's camp and then the camp itself and to come, I would start to uncover what the Lord had for me. You can see over there, there's a man with me. His name is Darren. His story is a beautiful testimony. There's a podcast where we shared it at church before. But yeah, ministering to him and starting to be involved in the church was a time of recovery for me. And as Darren and I prayed one day together, he gave me this picture of your dwelling place, a reference to Psalm 91. Um, and I started to get an idea of what the Lord had for me. Darren's story, I won't go into deeply, but basically, he was looking for a place to stay. And I said, well, I would try and help him find a place. And in that, I discovered, what is the situation of homelessness? Why do we have so many informal settlements and the lack of affordable housing for people? And there was born a passion out of that for affordable housing and how I can make a difference in this space. Want to just quickly over here touch on a couple of different things that I've become aware of and that have played a part, including the Development Action Group and a course that I'm currently doing called the Active Citizens Training Course. It's not a Christian organization, but they do have a lot of amazing Christians that are involved there. Also, The World Needs a Father is another ministry, and where I discovered this book, Bob's Buford Halftime. So this is where I find myself on the brink of what I believe is my second half. I had the blessing of taking a year of Jubilee at halftime. It was a joke initially, but then I landed up taking off a full year, really seeking the Lord and what He has for me. Um, and now we enter into the second half. That daily prayer came out of some of the work of Shay Bynes in Grace Over Grind, where she encourages people to just spend each, a day, some time each morning praying for your business, or how the Lord wants to lead you in your business, or what His plans are related to your work. And as I was trying to pray about business and business strategies and business plans, I realized that I just needed to pray around what is the Lord's plan for my life, and how He would use your dwelling place, which is Psalm 91 that was given to me. So you can see the two logos over here represent the two aspects of business that I find myself. The one on the right is Magnify. That is the consulting business. It's still a question mark for me whether, how God's going to use that, but that is my skills, my trainings, my information security, data privacy background. And then on the left is your dwelling place, which relates to affordable housing, but more specifically, I believe, around data-driven community development work. With my background in information security and data privacy, I'm really well positioned to be able to help collect information about those living in those dwellings. What are their circumstances? And I believe that in the information about that family, is the potential of that family and how we unlock it for the benefit and the freedom that they have. The Psalm 91 is obviously a reference to the fact that when we call on the Lord and we make Him the Lord our dwelling place, that He will protect us and keep from disease and harm from us. And I believe that is a reference to every shack, every hockey in South Africa. As each of these homes come to the Lord's going to provide for them, and He's going to basically make a way for them. And that's how, if we look at South Africa into Africa, we go from tents to temples, as we make the Lord our dwelling place. So serving in the local community is a big part of the second half for me. Serving men, serving fathers, and serving community leaders. Those are big aspects. So these last few slides speak a little bit about where I am right now, and and then we can take a little bit of time to pray. I know we're almost out of time, so I won't go through this. It's been too much time. This is, for me, the psalm is about daily prayer and coming before the Lord, and how important that is for each of us to spend time with the Lord each day and seek Him, so that we are fulfilling His purposes for our lives and not our own plans. So the scriptures that I've mentioned, that for your dwelling place, that are built on specifically Psalm 91, 9 and 10, because you made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. No evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague will come near your tent. And Psalm 140, 12 and 13, I know that the Lord will I know that the Lord will maintain the cause of the afflicted and will execute justice for the needy. Surely the righteous shall give thanks to your name. The upright shall dwell in your presence. I won't go through this, but basically this is how data can unlock the potential for every household within our informal settlements. And essentially, I see your dwelling place as a service provider that helps to train community leaders on how to collect this data, taking into account the privacy rights of the individual in the home, and protecting that data. That it works with community leaders and community partners in terms of being able to do this data mapping and collecting this information, and then also provides consulting services to particularly nonprofits that are operating in the community space. And that is my story.